Joining me now is Illinois Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democratic member of the House Appropriations and Intelligence Committees. He is also co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus. Welcome in, Congressman. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I'll jump right in. Ukraine says it needs more weapons. The U.S. just approved another $100 million in Javelin anti-tank missiles. When you hear Ukraine's foreign minister say they need weapons, more weapons, what more can and should the U.S. and the West be giving?
Sure. Look, we've been meeting with members of the RADA on a regular basis, and they've been giving us the same message for the length of this war. The last group that met us in person were all women. They were all mothers. They were talking about links on their phone that talked about when their children were under airstrikes. So their message is very powerful. They were saying weaponry is humanitarian aid. And when you see the genocide that takes place, the war crimes that are taking place, you have to agree. The bottom line is we need to dust off those weapons that are available in NATO and put them to real use. President Zelensky talked about 1% of the planes, the armor, the artillery, the ammunition. And I think they need to be moved forward so that they're readily available. The most important part of that is a long-term commitment and a public one, so that President Putin knows exactly what is going to take place. And as the chief said, this could be a very long war. Putin has to know that the commitment, the resolve from the West will be there as well.
It does seem that with every step the West has taken to show support, it has been in response to instead of a proactive, preventative step. I want to play for you part of what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, told the House Armed Services Committee this week. Take a listen.
We are entering a world that is becoming more unstable, and the potential for significant international conflict between great powers is increasing, not decreasing.
Congressman, does that line up with the intelligence you've received?
I would say generally very much so. It is a scary time, and it requires a commitment and a unity from the West to address these issues.
General Milley also said that the war in Ukraine could last for years. So who does a long war better serve, Russia or Ukraine? And will the U.S. be able to keep up its hundreds of millions of dollars in weapons and aid for that long?
Well, not by itself. It has to be a multilateral effort. But if you look at the briefings and the readings that you might have seen publicly, that this war was only going to take a matter of days, the fact that it would be much longer would be seen in a perverse way as good news. But a long war, you'll see the images you're seeing on an ongoing basis. The Russians will target civilians. They will flatten hospitals. They will indiscriminately bomb nuclear power plants, threatening all of Europe. So no one wins, and that is a devastating humanitarian crisis that we'll have to face, with the results and the realization that the Russians are now saying that it's maybe important to target those weapons lines that are coming in through Poland and other countries. That, obviously, as to the Joint Chiefs talking about, presents real threats to the rest of the world in escalation.
I want to ask you a little bit about the targets, because, of course, we've been talking about the latest development with the train station, which Russia has denied targeting. But there's much mounting evidence to the contrary of that. Is the targeting of that and these civilians being killed more likely to draw the U.S. into possibly actual war with Russia? Boots on the ground in Ukraine helping?
I don't see the U.S., NATO, or the West having boots on the ground, but I do see that, as to your point, we are reacting after the fact. So if Russia is all in on war crimes and genocide, the West needs to be all in on giving Ukraine everything it needs, not waiting till later and say, oh, wait, now that's genocide. The EU just talked about cutting off Russian coal. Let's cut off all their energy exports. Let's make this as difficult as possible. Let's include all Russian banks when we eliminate them from the SWIFT system. Let's sanction all of the oligarchs. Let's make this as painful as possible. Let's not wait for the next act of genocide or war crime.
Let's not wait. We also want to turn to potentially major development with the January 6th committee that I'd like to get your thoughts on. A news source tells NBC News that the panel is considering interviewing the former president. Is this a route that you would like to see your colleagues take?
Oh, yeah, because for multiple years as a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, I was part of two major investigations in the president. And despite what his people said, he did obstruct the Mueller investigation, and he refused to testify there. So sure, I would love to see it. It's justified, but I totally understand the limitations, the political realities, and the balance that this committee has to play out. Can they get the information they need lawfully through subpoenas, other witnesses, and documents? And again, they're in a race for time. So sure, this is a president, President Trump, who has always evaded justice, who has never been held accountable for any of his misdoings and his crimes, frankly. So I would love to see it. Do I imagine it happening? You know, if past is any indication, I don't expect it.
Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois, we appreciate your thoughts this afternoon, and I could not agree more. Time is of the utmost urgency right now.